Let's move on to Lesson 2. Lesson 2, we're going to be considering some rhythmic signs. Let's just look a little bit at the breakdown of the first part of this manual. You have 4 chapters that have to deal with notation because we have to get that behind us in order to get exposure to Gregorian chant, because as we said last time in the first instruction, Gregorian chant these days, the only practical way to learn them is from the books. We said that that wasn't the way it was all the time, but now practically the best way to become initiated is to start with the books, in which case we have to learn the notation. So 4 chapters on notation. First of all, melodic notation. We covered that last time. You know, the punctums, the virga, and the staffs, that kind of thing. Now this chapter, the rhythmic signs, we have 2 more chapters on the different kind of neumes. The neumes, remember, are the combinations of notes together. 2 or more notes together make a neume. This chapter then is on the rhythmic signs. We have to cover in this chapter the bars, the epizemas, the dot, and eventually the comma, which is a very minor rhythmic sign. Let's look then at the book and treat the bars. The bars are of various levels. The first one we'll encounter is the first one is dealt with in the book, is the quarter bar. The quarter bar looks like a slash on the 4th line of the staff. Here you see these 2 quarter bars there are circled. The quarter bar is a punctuation. You can draw an analogy with composition. In a paragraph, you have various levels of pauses or distinctions. You have a comma, you have a semicolon, you have a period, and then you have the end of the paragraph. That will correspond then to each of the 4 divisions that we're going to be reviewing right now. And the quarter bar, let's liken it to a comma. A comma sets off an incise, a minor part of a sentence. And likewise, a quarter bar sets off an incise in music. That is a minor division, a small distinction. There is a distinction, but not much. You also have a half bar. The half bar extends vertically across the 2nd and 3rd lines. You see, it's circled here. The half bar would correspond to I would liken it to a semicolon. It's not the end of a sentence, it's not the end of a complete statement, but it's the end of a clause, if you like. The sentence goes on. It's a division in a full statement. Or if you like, a half of a full statement, a half bar. So in what that works out to in music is it's not a full musical statement, but if you like, a half, a certain rather important distinction in that musical statement. A full bar, I'd liken to a period. It's a statement has been made, a musical statement has been made. It ends a division, a complete development in the melody. And here you have the full bar, and like you would guess, the full bar extends right across the full extent from the 4th bar, from the 4th line all the way down to the 1st line. So here ends the first musical phrase, we call that a phrase here, and then the 2nd musical phrase begins afterwards. And then there's a double bar. A double bar is a doubled full bar, as you can see here. And there, the counterpart in composition would be the end of a paragraph, for example. You see the very form of the writing. At the end of the paragraph, you skip a line. You see that a major development has been the double bar is meant to mark the end of a piece. So there are secondary uses of the double bar, though. When a chant is alternated between two sides of a choir, and you're beginning to see now that between two sides of a choir, you can have many chants are alternated between one side of the choir and the other. When that is the case, then a double bar will signify that the part of one side is over, and from then on, the other side takes over. Such is the case here with the Kyrie eleison, here at the bottom of the page 22. The first choir sings the Kyrie eleison, and then it's the second choir's job after the double bar till the next double bar. Let's go to the board now and make a review of what we've just gone over. We want to name the different kinds of bars and what they look like and what they do. So the name first of the bar, we'll just disregard this. This is for later on in the lesson. Name, the appearance, the part it marks off, and then its function. Okay, now the first is the quarter bar. And here, if you don't mind, I'm going to do the appearance all on one stave. Otherwise, I'm going to have to write the staff over again. So the first one, the quarter bar, looks like that. The part that it marks off is called an incise. And instead of the function, we'll call this the pause. And here, the quarter bar involves no pause. So we'll just put none. There for that. The half bar goes halfway. It goes between, it touches the third and the second line and crosses them a little bit. That marks off, I forgot to tell you that in what I just exposed before this. What that is called a member. So the half bar, when you encounter a half bar, it marks off between half bars, what's called is a member. And the pause involved, you can take a respiration, take a breath, but on the value of the preceding note. So suppose you have a dotted punctum there, and then a half bar, and you started off with another punctum afterwards. You sing this note, and you take whatever you need off that note in order to take a breath and start right on time with the next note. So how should we say that? Breath on the value of the preceding note. And there's no slowing. We should put that, no slowing. Okay, now we're on to the full bar. The full bar extends all the way from the top to the bottom. And that marks off a phrase and, excuse my English. There we go. It marks off a phrase. And is there a pause? There is some slowing. And then breath. Do you take a breath? And a pause measured according to the context, which we're going to have to explain to you on in the 5th lesson. Likewise for the double bar, it's double full bar, and that marks off a period. And here, of course, there's going to be, there is a marked slowing because it's the end of the piece. You want to make it understood that the piece is coming to an end. Do we have to mention the breath or the pause? It's obvious. Oh, the piece is ended. Okay, so that is a little bit a summary of what you have to know about the bars, at least the material side, the reading of what they signify. In the book, we have an example on page 23 of a chant that uses all of the bars that we've just encountered. Here on the top here, this chant here that goes 4 lines. The first thing you encounter is a quarter bar here, which marks off, of course, an incise. Afterwards, a half bar. And between the quarter bar and the half bar, you call that an incise. But between the half bar and the beginning, that corresponds to the higher distinction, or the higher part, which is the member. So quarter bar here, full bar, quarter bar, full bar, half bar, and double bar. Now let's just look. There are 3 phrases. That is, a phrase is comprised between 2 full bars. Now there's a logical full bar at the beginning. So from the beginning to the first full bar, 1 phrase. And that phrase is divided into 2 members. 2 members, you see. There's a half bar in the middle of that phrase. 1 member here, 1 member here. Each member is divided into 2 incises by the quarter bar, which is in the middle. 1 incise here, 1 incise, a member. 1 incise here, 1 incise here, and the member. The whole thing being the phrase. Let's look at the second phrase now. From full bar to full bar. The second phrase is divided in the middle by a quarter bar. So that second phrase only has 2 incises. Third phrase, you have full bar to the end, is divided in the middle by a half bar. So that makes the 1 phrase, third phrase, divided into 2 members. So that's what we have to basically know to read the chant as just what we have to know concerning the bars. The epizema is also another thing that we have to deal with. The epizema is a word that comes from the Greek. If we take the Greek word epi, and then it comes from another semeion. No. Now, epi just means on, and semeion means sign. Well, all that means is that it's a sign on something else. Now, that happens to be a sign on a note. So if you like, it's a very generic term. And the nature of the epizema is kind of generic too. Let's explain that. The epizema can be of two kinds. It can be like that or like that. They're traits, either vertical, in which case it's called a vertical epizema, or horizontal, and in which case it's called a horizontal epizema. Let's go back to the book now. Here you have on page 23 at the bottom a few examples circled in red of epizemas. The first two are horizontal epizemas. Of course, the first one there is extended over the 3 notes, and the second one just over 1 note. And then the 2 next examples there in the diagram are vertical epizemas. Now, what do they signify? Well, first of all, the horizontal epizema. The horizontal epizema means that there is a certain expression to be given to that note. What kind of expression? Well, to give a detailed answer to that question, I'll just have to refer you to the 2nd and 3rd level of this course. Basically, what that means is you could sum it up in a little bit of warmth in the voice. We could usually the expression is fairly evident for someone who has a little bit of musical taste. You see, there's a little bit of, it's not just a straight note there. There's something special about that note. And usually someone who has a little bit of sense of Gregorian chant and music in general can figure it out pretty good, pretty easily. The final answer is in the old manuscripts, the first notations of the chant that date back to the 8th and 9th century. See, they're much closer to the origins, and you have to imagine a scribe there with a very quick hand as they're singing, just noting quickly exactly what they're doing. And that's the most definitive indication we have of the nuances of Gregorian chant. And so they exist replicas of these old manuscripts which are available, and you'd have to go into that and look and see what's written, see exactly how it's notated, and see what the horizontal epizema is about. But that's way beyond where we are right now, and that we don't have to concern ourselves with that kind of complication. Basically then, it involves a certain nuance, a certain expression to the note, which requires a lengthening, but it's not the lengthening that is first signified. A long note is, the epizema is not a long note per se. It's first of all an expression, and after the expression, the expression will require as a consequence its lengthening. Next, the vertical epizema. The vertical epizema determines the rhythm, whereas the horizontal epizema nuances the rhythm. The vertical epizema, this one here, you find under a note, and that shows you where the downbeat is, the down pulse. More on that in the 5th lesson. We'll explain that in detail. There is a complementary rhythmic distinction which is called a comma. You can see it in the example in the book. Here, the comma sets off two portions of an incise. So the comma is an even less weighty distinction than the quarter bar. So it's, take a breath if you like, but it's a very minor distinction. With that, now we have to move on to a few little complementary notions on Gregorian solfeggio. We have to look at the different intervals that we encounter, and I apologize for those who are well versed in theory. This is not going to teach you anything. Nevertheless, the instruction has to be rather complete so that everybody can be taken step by step and be able to do the exercises at the end of the chapter. So here we're explaining what it is, what a second, a third, and a fourth is. So going back to the manual, we have an interval of a second here on the first diagram. These are various intervals. Now, it's very, very simple. For those who are not familiar with music theory, a second is simply the interval between two successive notes. Second, two. So between do and re, or between re and mi. A third would be the interval between three successive notes. That is, between do, you skip re, to mi. Between do and mi. Or between re, skipping mi, to fa. Re to fa. A fourth would be the interval between four successive notes. Start with fa, skip sol, and la to ti, or to te, if you like. Fa to ti, or fa to te, is a fourth. And the same thing with the fifth. Okay? Now, going back to the book, we have to distinguish between a major second and a minor second. And here we take our ruler back again and we put it underneath the diagram that we're looking at. These here are all of the instances that you can find on the Gregorian stave of the major second, which is a full tone between two successive notes. Now, where does that happen? Between do and re is one tone. Between re and mi is one tone. No, mi and fa is a half tone, so that doesn't work. Fa and sol, between sol and la, between la and ti. So that's what we have here. Do to re, mi, fa sol, la, fa sol, sol la, la ti, and remember te do. Between ti and do is a half tone, but between te and do is a full tone. If we go down to the next one, they've represented here the half tones possible. Between mi and fa, between la and te, half tone, and between ti and do, half tone. Here, down at the bottom of the page, they've represented several thirds at random. Do, mi, leaving re out, of course. Fa, la, leaving sol in between. And ti, re, leaving do between the two. Then on the next page, the book lists the major thirds. The major thirds, as you can probably guess, is 2 full tones. So between do and mi, do to re is 1 tone. Between re and mi is 1 tone, 2 full tones. You can't get that between re and fa, you see, because you've got a half tone between mi and fa. You have to go all the way to fa, sol, la, full, 2 full tones. And then between sol, la, ti, 2 full tones. Now the book left that one out, didn't it? But then again, te to re is also 2 full tones. Between te and do is 1 tone, and between do and re is 1 tone. So 2 full tones. Here, the next diagram gives us the minor thirds. Minor thirds, you probably can guess, 1 tone plus a half tone. So between re and fa, you have re mi, full tone, mi fa, half tone. Between mi and sol, mi fa, plus half tone, plus a full tone. Between sol and te, full tone plus a half tone. Between la and do, full tone plus a half tone. Between ti and re, half tone plus a full tone. And likewise for the 4th and the 5th. Although the distinction between the 4th, the major 4th and minor 4th, the major 4th and minor 5th are not very important at all in Gregorian chant. This theory lesson situates us and prepares us for the exercises, just like last instruction. The purpose of the exercises of this instruction is to drill you in the various intervals that you encounter in Gregorian chant. The seconds, the thirds, the fourths, and the fifths, which are the most frequent ones encountered. Going back to the book, take a look at it. The first exercise you can see progresses always by 1 tone, by successive notes. You never make any jumps. The audio samples make it easy. You just follow along. But let me just point out again that eventually you're going to be weaned of audio samples. Audio samples stop for the 4th lesson. Second of all, if you're serious about doing this course, you're going to have to face an exam at the end. And for the exam, you're not going to be given an audio sample. You're going to be asked to read a piece in solfeggio. So you're going to have to know how to decipher. Let me point out right away that's what's really key in accomplishing these exercises is not to hesitate. Do not allow yourself to pause when you are looking, when you're stumbling over a note or anything like that. Rather, take it slower so that you can accomplish the exercise regularly without any hesitation. That is the kind of habit that you want to be building up. The first exercise then is focused on the second. The second exercise here prepares the third. Do, re, mi, do. Mi, do, see, is the third. And then re, fa, etc. It goes up the whole do scale. The third exercise for the is for the interval of the 4th, prepares the 4th and drills you on the 4th. Likewise, the 4th exercise drills you on the 5th. The 4th and the 5th exercise get a little bit more involved, but thanks to the audio samples, if you follow them, there should be no problem. If you run into problems and you're not unable to do it by yourself, then listen to the audio sample once more, do it with them, and then tackle it again. This chapter gives you a veritable blitz on solfeggio practice. After these exercises on the different intervals, you're given 4 pieces with whose one of whose purposes is to drill you on reading notation with the different situations of the do and fa clef. The first one on page 29 has the do clef on the 4th line. The second one has the do clef on the 3rd line. The third one has the do clef on the 2nd line. And finally, the 4th one, the fa clef on the 3rd line. These are not exercises. Finally, you get into actual Gregorian chant. These are chosen because they're simple, and they're also syllabic. That is, they don't involve, they're simply one note at a time. They don't involve the neumes, which we'll be tackling next lesson. You have, again, audio samples there, so listen to them if you need, and then afterwards try them by yourself. First, naming the notes without any hesitation, and then singing the notes with the note names. As always, for all of the lessons, there's a written exercise, and this written exercise involves going to the Gloria 15, finding that in the book that you have, and then naming writing down in the left column the Latin syllables, and then on the right side the names of the notes. It's exactly like the previous one. The only trouble you might have, first of all, would be finding where that piece is. Let me remind you of the appendix in the back of the book on page 283. And there we find Gloria 15 is the one we're looking for. See the lesson 2. Now we're going to be looking in the old gradual, which is here, extraordinary form, Roman gradual, RG, 1908. And now it says 51. Now I have to point out to you, for this column, for the RG 1908, we forgot to put in the asterisks. So sometimes in this column, and always if it pertains to a Kyrie, Gloria, Sanctus, Agnus Dei, that is part of the ordinary of the Mass, more on that in a subsequent excursus. Always if it pertains to a part of the ordinary Mass, there should be an asterisk added to it. So basically, if you're new at this and you have an old gradual, then if you don't find it on page 51, look on page 51 star asterisk. Okay? So we turn to page 51 asterisk here, and we look at the Gloria in Excelsis Deo. We're going to put this under the DocuCam right now. The manual gives you a sample on another piece. We're going to go through the very first part again. Let me mention another thing that you must not forget for this homework assignment. Now that you know the bars, you have to mark in the bars. So let's draw our column. So Latin syllables, and then the notes. So Gloria in Excelsis Deo. Okay, those are the Latin syllables. Now, what are the notes that correspond? Here we have do clef, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi. So let's name the notes. Mi, sol, sol, la, 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 sol, la, sol, mi. So mi, sol, la, etc. Now we add in the rest of the notes, and then after deo, the last note is mi. Then don't forget double bar. That divides the first phrase from what comes afterwards. So there you go. The excursus features St. Gregory the Great, after which Gregorian chant is named. Who was he? When did he live? What did he do? That's the kind of thing that you can expect to be answered by the excursus, which again are, I don't recommend that you just leave them aside. They give really important background, especially if you're serious about this endeavor. Not only that, but they're quite readable and interesting. So there we've set you up for another pile of work with the exercises, the homework, and well, a little bit of reading, side reading with the excursus. You're well on your way to learning how to read Gregorian chant. Next lesson, we start into the neumes, which remember are the combinations of 2 or 3 notes. There's a certain amount of terminology that we have to master just so as to know what we're talking about. So that is what you can expect for next time. I'd like to close off simply on the picture of St. Gregory the Great that's at the end of the excursus in the manual.